All right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. As we continue on, let's talk some Brewers baseball. Jeff Levering from the Brewers Broadcast Network joins us now. And of course, you can follow him all season long. And it's been a great season, by the way, for the Milwaukee Brewers. They win their fourth straight game against the Atlanta Braves. I mean, it just, Jeff, I kid a lot here on the show with everybody that the front of the jersey just is all that matters in Milwaukee. The back of the jersey and the name, like they just keep putting guys in there and it just doesn't seem to matter. You lose Chourio, lose Misiorowski, just guys go down. It doesn't, look, it does matter. I get it. It does matter. But I think it just speaks to more of the way that the organization is run, that they could just keep filling in names to fill in while other guys are either leaving for free agency or trade or injured.
No doubt, Craig. It's plug and play, right? It feels like it's been that way for the last 10 years. Free agents leave, people are traded, and it's just the next man up. I think the Brewers have been as good as anybody in Major League Baseball getting the most out of their talent, right? I mean, you look at the Brewers bullpen right now, and everybody back there has essentially been designated for assignment at some point in their career. So they have something to prove. So it's the all DFA squad back there, and then you've got a bunch of little scrappy players that are refusing to strike out. They score a ton of runs. They play the game the right way. They're in every single ball game. Just a fun brand of baseball, and it's turning into winning baseball. I think this is such a long stretch since the middle of May that you can't call it a fluke anymore. This is who the Brewers are.
Yep, several games now above the Cubs here. Cubs are going to have to make up some ground. Of course, the Reds are still in this thing, and we anticipate the Cardinals probably going the other way at some point. Credit to them for staying in it, and Pirates, waiting for next season. So let's get into really some of the big success stories for the Brewers this season. It has to start, of course, as always, with the pitching, and everybody knows all about Jacob Misiorowski, who's currently on the IL. So before I turn it over to you, I do want an update on him. But Freddy Peralta has been fantastic. Quinn Priester, since being acquired, has also been great. Chad Patrick, a surprise. And Jose Quintana's just being generally who he has been over the course of several years. So let's start off with the update on Misiorowski, if you don't mind, and then take it from there on the pitch.
Yeah, the Miz is going to be fine. He took a comebacker in his last appearance against the Cubs and has a bruise on his shin, but just wasn't recovering the way that he wanted to recover. So the Brewers were in an innings crunch to begin with him because he's already at a career high in terms of innings. So they want to make sure he's back down just a bit. But he'll be fine. He'll take the minimum stay on the injured list and be back for a stretch where the Brewers are going to play 19 games in 18 days, starting the midpoint of August. But one guy who's not even on that list for you is Brandon Woodruff, and this great stretch for the Brewers really started when he came back. The Brewers have only lost 4 games total since Brandon Woodruff returned to the roster. I think it's like an 18-4 record in their last 22 since Brandon Woodruff came back. But the starting pitching has been excellent. Remember, in the beginning of the season, they had to go out and get a guy like Quinn Priester. They had to go get Jose Quintana in the middle of spring training because their starters were going down left and right. Now they've built the stockpile of arms, and they're going to end up being just fine in terms of that. Chad Patrick's in the minor leagues. You bring a guy like Logan Henderson back up, and he's doing great. He pitched a couple days ago in Washington. There is a surplus of arms in the Brewers organization, and for the last 7 weeks of this season, going into the playoffs, they're going to be just fine with their innings.
Yeah, and the team is built for the postseason with the pitching. I guess what I would ask you, Jeff, is at the deadline, with what the club did, do you feel like they did enough offensively to hang? Of course, I saw them play against Miami, who was, simply on an incredible run here, which is true. But it does seem to me that's going to be the question. If Milwaukee does make the postseason, how far they can go is going to have to be scoring eventually 4 or 5 runs in some game. Although they did score like 20 the other day. I saw that, but consistently.
Yeah, 38 runs over the weekend at Washington, D.C. on 56 hits. They did just fine, but that's against the Nationals. That's not against, a Cubs pitching staff. That's not against a Mets pitching staff and a revamped bullpen. So the biggest question going into the trade deadline was the lack of power. And I think the Brewers have done a good job of finding some offense with the power here recently. I think they've got 9 homers in the last 4 ball games. So having some guys pop some homers, the revelation that is Andrew Vaughn has really helped over at first base. Christian Yelich is over 20 homers. They'll get Jackson Chourio back hopefully pretty soon with his hamstring issue. But they're finding ways to create offense. The biggest thing for the Brewers is that they are dynamic offensively. They will run the bases. They will just wear you down. until a pitching staff or a defense essentially just lays down and gives up. And that's what it feels like when the Brewers play against teams, that this pitching staff gets frustrated, the defense gets frustrated, then they make mistakes, and the Brewers take advantage of all of those mistakes. You don't necessarily have to hit home runs during the regular season. You're going to have to find some ways to pop some homers in the playoffs, though.
So, I always like asking folks like you, Jeff, because you see the entire league, and you certainly haven't seen everyone yet. I know you will in August and September here as we close it out. But
Mhm.
having watched the Brewers every day, to me, they look like a team that's going to be in the postseason, that's going to fight. When you see the rest of the league, who would you identify as some of the contenders in the National League? Because it just seems so bunched up record wise. Like even the Dodgers, like every team is kind of 2, 3 games either ahead or behind one another.
Yeah, the National League, I think the balance of power in Major League Baseball is definitely tilting towards the National League and has been for a couple of years. But for me, when you look at some of the guys and some of the teams that the Brewers are going to have to try and get themselves through, it's the Padres. I think the Mets are a better team. I think the Phillies are certainly a better team with the addition of Duran at the back end of their bullpen. And the Phillies totally revamped, or I should say the Mets totally revamped their entire bullpen. The Brewers are going to see the Mets this weekend in Milwaukee. It's going to be a great series, and I can't wait to see what it's going to be like the first time the Mets come back onto that field since the wild card round of last year. Devastating loss, of course, in the playoffs for the Brewers.
Yeah.
But I think that those are two teams, especially in the East, that are going to give some teams some problems. I think the Marlins are going to give some teams some problems over the last 7 weeks of the season. The way that their pitching staff is and the way they play defense, their pesky offense, I think they're a team that people are going to have to pay attention to. And of course, San Diego and LA too, out on the West Coast. Those are two really good teams. The Brewers have one more series with the Padres out in San Diego at the end of September. That's going to be must watch, must listen baseball.
Yeah, there's no question. So you gave us update on Misiorowski. I forgot to ask you because I know a lot of folks probably watching and wondering on Jackson Chourio, who is to me one of the very best players in all of baseball, not just the National League. It's a little bit a longer timeline on him. Am I correct by saying that?
Yeah, ever so slightly. They initially thought it was going to be spasms and he might be back in there in a couple of days, but they decided to just let themselves get through it, make sure that he is totally through it, so it doesn't vamp back up. And those soft tissue injuries. And Churio's never been hurt. He's 21 years old, so to have a guy like that who's never felt a sensation like he felt in the back of his hamstring, give him the time to rest. Now is the time to do it. You don't want to have something like that going on in September. So Chourio should be okay. They're thinking a minimum stay. Did get a PRP injection in his hamstring, so that's just settling down right now. But he should be okay when the Brewers get back home and be reevaluated and go from there.
All right. Well, Jeff, enjoy the rest of the run here for the Milwaukee Brewers. I know that we'll be catching you on the broadcast here through September, and then naturally, I would expect the Brewers to make another charge in the postseason. We'll see if they can pull it all together offensively and pitching as well. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
You got it, Craig. Here's the hope, and thanks so much for having me.
All right, Jeff Levering, always a pleasure to have him on our show. And I mean, the one thing that he did say, which is really true, like you think about how much we talked about Devin Williams for the Yankees the last week or so. You think about how often we're alluding to Josh Hader. I mean, both of those guys made up the eighth and ninth inning at the highest levels in all of baseball, maybe the very best in baseball on the Brewers. Neither of them are there. And it doesn't even matter. The Brewers just keep rolling on. Um, and a lot of other pitchers that they have, they just do a great job, man. I give them so much credit.